Are you ready to dairy-free your mind? This summer, melt away your dairy-free expectations with So Delicious dairy-free frozen desserts. Enjoy mind-blowing flavors like salted caramel cluster, chocolate cookies and cream, cookie dough, and more. For over 35 years, So Delicious has been cranking up the flavor with show-stopping products that are 100% dairy-free, certified vegan by Vegan Action, and are so unbelievably creamy, your taste buds will do a double take. Dairy-free your mind. Visit SoDeliciousDairyFree.com.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The Judge Janine Pirro, Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday Morning Show.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All right, let's bring in our next VIP guest. He is John Solomon. Follow him at J. Solomon Reports on X. John, of course, is a Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist and the founder of Just the News. Johnny, how are you?
I am well. Good to be with you, Joe.
Congrats on your Brewers, who are, I think, going to win 155 games this year.
It's an amazing thing to watch, isn't it? Wow.
It's insane.
What a run. What a run.
And no one saw it coming. I mean, like, you don't think Brewers and World Series, but right now they look like the favorites, but we could talk about baseball all day. I do want to talk about this big story you have on justthenews.com about the House Education and Workforce Committee has opened an investigation into alleged anti-Semitism at the National Education Association. That's the largest teachers union in the U.S. What's going on there?
Well, they had an event a couple of months ago where several teachers who attended said, several Jewish teachers said when they attended, they felt they were treated hostilely, name-called, protested, an agenda that seemed to suggest that Jews were somehow to blame for the world's problems. And so they raised some concerns, and now Congress itself is beginning to dig in and find out whether that is a hostile environment. There are some people in Congress that want to revoke the nationwide union charter for NEA, which would be a big threat to that teachers union, which is one of the most reliable Democratic constituencies. They're a big donor, big political activist on the left, and, of course, a big organizer of the left's agenda in the education school system. So this is a big moment. The hearings will create a factual basis to see if there is an anti-Semitism problem inside of the union. Union will get its chance to make its case. And then I think Congress will make a decision whether it wants to go or try to force the Labor Department to revoke the charter of this teacher schools union based on whatever they find. So it'll be interesting. This is a high stakes fight. It isn't just a dead of summer hearing. There is much bigger stakes for both sides on how this hearing turns out.
It'll be interesting to see how the media covers this. Actually, it won't be interesting. It'll be predictable. I'm sure, John, we'll see the CNNs and the MS, whatever they are now, MS Nows of the world, and New York Times, Washington Post, probably defending the union to the hilt, while those who are objective, sane, and sober will try to treat this hearing for the importance that it brings, and that is that anti-Semitism has no place in our education system yet, and we need to obviously get to the bottom of this, and it's good to see accountability is back. Overall, we're now 8 months into this administration, which is remarkable. It feels like 8 years, but so much has happened. If you were to look at the biggest successes and failures, if you could find them, I suppose, with the Trump administration, what would they be if you were to list like gold, silver, and bronze right now as far as successes are concerned?
Well, listen, I think at the gold level, the velocity of change that they've been able to create, things are happening at a breakneck speed, and government is being reshaped in ways big and small. This is a little tidbit that I don't think got the proper attention because it is so significant. But earlier this week, the administration filed a notice in the Federal Register giving its projections for the size of the federal workforce. 300,000 jobs will have been eliminated from the federal workforce by the end of the year, according to this filing. That's a 16% reduction, the largest reduction of the federal workforce in the history of the country. And by the way, at a moment when we're trying to find significant savings with $2 trillion a year in deficit. So a big one there. You see downstream in Tulsi Gabbard shrinking down the D&I, which ballooned up over the last few years. It was originally a couple hundred staffers. It got to 2,000. It's going to come back down to about 700-800 when they're done, a 40% reduction there. So government's being reshaped. Lee Zeldin is reshaping the regulatory powers in a big way. The Green New Agenda is dead. It has been destroyed at every level. And the president's powers to make these sort of changes, both economically or fiscally and policy-wise, have been reaffirmed by the courts day in and day out. Yesterday, another big win in the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court said Donald Trump is free to get rid of $800 million of NIH research that he thinks is too DEI-oriented, too far left-oriented. It's in the power and prowess of the president. He's won many powers like that, and what he's done is given not only himself but future presidents the power to shrink government and to make agenda changes inside the confines of what Congress appropriates. And I think that is, from a long-term perspective, large change. In the short-term perspective, silver, easy, low-hanging fruit, he did it quickly. Probably really consequential to everyday people is fixing the border. It wasn't rocket science. He just had to enforce the law and put people back on the border, but he did it quick. And I think now he's beginning to help the American public in the bronze category understand the dangers of weaponization. It isn't just a Fox News story anymore. Everyday Americans are starting to see, all right, wait a second. Federal officials were leaking classified information. They were going after people who are innocent. They made up fake intelligence reports. And I think over the last couple of months, a story that mostly was in conservative circles now is beginning to break out into the center of America, and that is that we had abuses in government that looked something like Richard Nixon, and maybe there needs to be some accountability, some firing, maybe some prosecutions. And so in the bronze category, I think the beginning of building public sentiment towards supporting punishment is probably another accomplishment that hasn't been fully shouted out yet.
And we're talking to John Solomon. He is the founder of JustTheNews.com. So going into the 2026 midterms, and I get it, they're still 14 months away. What do you see as a liability as far as what Trump needs to accomplish in order to hold the House, particularly because, well, if Democrats take back the House, and it won't take a lot, right? They have to flip something like 4 seats. Right. Then you have House Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, and we have impeachment hearings in perpetuity.
That's right. That's all there'll be. Listen, I think there are two elements. One is the big gambit he's made on tariffs, which has brought in some early big revenues, bigger than expected. It hasn't yet generated a significant amount of inflation. If he can keep inflation in check, and the economy can keep creating signs that it is starting roaring back to life, that people have a little bit more money to spend because gas is a little bit cheaper or electric bills are going to be a little bit cheaper, he'll do well. If inflation keeps persistent or grows and it can be blamed on his tariffs, he's going to have a pocketbook issue that's going to be a liability for him going into the 26 election. They're acutely aware of it. And I think that the early signs are they've been able to overachieve. And I think even economists who were deeply against the tariffs are saying, maybe they weren't as bad as I thought. Maybe there's going to be something good out of it. But it's not out of the woods yet. It's not out of the forest. And so I think that is the big issue. And then I think in addition to that, it's important in the 26 election that they have good candidates. They don't forget the successes. Republicans don't forget the successes they had in getting out the early vote for the first time. In 6 elections, they lost the early vote every time. In the last election, they were head-to-head and even-handed with Democrats in generating a vote early in the battleground states. About 4.2 million people voted early who had never voted early for Republicans. But do they forget that and go into 26 and don't do that? That's a liability. And I think third is the messaging around what is certainly going to be a round of accountability from all of the scandals from Russia collusion all the way up to the raid on Mar-a-Lago and the Jack Smith prosecutions. It is important that the president not allow that to be looked like retribution, that he builds the case that we're not retributing. We're punishing people to create a deterrent for future presidents. My retribution was I won the election. I won. That's the ultimate. I drove the Democrats nuts. This is not about retribution. This is about really punishing people who abuse their system and making sure people in the future aren't tempted to do that. He can't let the Democrats have the victimology of retribution. And so, because there's going to be prosecutions, there's going to be some activity, like you saw in the last 24 hours of the raid of John Bolton's house. And the first, coverage will be, is this a retribution against a critic or is it a legitimate case? I think how they control that narrative and how they build that narrative will be important to make sure it doesn't become a boomerang against Republicans and Trump in the 26 election.
Yeah, we're talking to John Solomon. Yeah, that's the thing. As far as accountability with Russiagate, for example, which Just the News has been all over, and rightly so, do you think ultimately there will be accountability when it comes to Comey or John Brennan, former head of the CIA? Obviously, Comey was head of the FBI. Obviously, we also have James Clapper, who was head of the DNI. It just seems like the evidence that Tulsi Gabbard, the current head of the DNI, is overwhelming what she's putting out there. It's not just accusations without anything behind them like we heard so often with Trump and Russia, but there's some real teeth there. But it seems like whenever these things happen, right, for instance, like when all that evidence was there against Joe Biden, against Hunter Biden, as far as those shell companies and all those millions going to the Biden family, it seemed like that was a slam dunk and then nothing happened. So are we in nothing happened ultimately territory? You think there's some real teeth here where we actually can see some accountability?
Listen, the evidence has always been there. And the key was, would the evidence be treated fairly by the everyday FBI agents and prosecutors who control the machinery of government and the court system? And what we learned with Hunter Biden was, until I could expose, and I broke the first set of stories on the IRS whistleblowers, until people knew the IRS whistleblowers had a legitimate case, but it was being suppressed, Hunter Biden was going to get a skate. And then, of course, he ended up with 2 federal indictments and 2 federal convictions. Now, in fairness, his father pardoned him and got him off the hook again. But the American public went from thinking that Hunter Biden's story was either a Russian piece of misinformation or just a political witch hunt against Joe Biden, to realizing, hey, the guy cheated on his taxes and other things, and that turned. It turned because federal agents who had real evidence and facts were finally allowed to do their job, but it didn't turn without a lot of drama. And the moment when those whistleblowers came forward was one of the seminal moments in the last 4 or 5 years. When you go back now and you look at all the things that I've been reporting over the last 4 to 5 months, you have overwhelming proof from Tulsi Gabbard that an intelligence assessment was hijacked and fake or bad intelligence used to make it come to a political conclusion that the career people didn't want. Career people did not believe Putin tried to favor Trump over Clinton in the election, but Joe Biden, Barack Obama, James Comey ended up hijacking a process and turning it into it's a Donald Trump problem. And then I think similarly, you now see in the stories like I broke just in the last 24 hours with James Comey, the Trump Justice Department in 2019 had overwhelming evidence that James Comey likely authorized illegal classified leaks to the media, to the New York Times specifically. And the evidence was his own deputies admitting it. They told me to do it. I did it. The instruction came from him. And so you'd have the chief of staff and the chief counsel to James Comey potentially testifying against Comey and accusing him of an illegal classified leak. The Trump Justice Department gave Comey a pass. Now, the statute is 10 years. A lot of evidence wasn't even gathered during that time frame, like emails that the FBI wanted to show just how bad this leaking was. Does Pam Bondi, does Kash Patel, do the career agents go get that and make a case now before the statute does? And how will the American public look when the former top 2 deputies to James Comey said he told me to leak? If that were to be the case, the public might look at that as a factual, hey, I don't like leakers like that. That risks our national security. So a lot has to play out in order for those things to happen. The real question is who's in good charge of the daily bureaucracy in the FBI and the Justice Department and other places where these decisions are made or broken. In the last 10 years, they were broken. They were blocked. And
we're talking to John Solomon at J. Solomon Reports on X. John, we only got about a minute left. And that's the thing about Comey. He admitted under oath during those hearings that were watched by something like 25 million people way back when to leaking to the New York Times information about Donald Trump, and he was openly proud of it, like he was doing a public service. Nobody likes James Comey. I mean, Democrats don't like him because they felt that he hurt Hillary Clinton right before the 2016 election. Republicans, obviously, for the reasons that you just listed, don't trust him in any way, shape, or form. Yet he's talking about how he went to a Taylor Swift concert and heard a song about being mean and then equated that to Donald Trump. Do you think there's something, I'm saying this almost jokingly, but maybe I'm not. Yeah. Is there something a little mentally wrong with James Comey where he's talking about going to Taylor Swift concerts at age 64?
Yeah, listen, it was funny. Some of the agents who work for him and chafed working for him were joking with me the other day when I talked to them, saying maybe he's trying to create an insanity defense for himself. So maybe that's what the thing is. Like, listen, he went under oath. He actually said he never leaked. He never was an anonymous source, but his own staffers now have acknowledged in federal interviews that there were leaks and that he authorized them or that they facilitated it for him. That is a big piece of evidence that has to be reconciled. How do you reconcile his testimony with the evidence that's now there? And does he get indicted for lying? Does he get indicted for leaking? These are big moments ahead. I think James Comey will be one of the most important figures in history in how the future of the FBI is governed. Will we have an FBI that people trust 20 years from now? In that case, probably James Comey has faced some repercussion beyond what he has. If we don't have an FBI that people trust, it may be because the era of abuses in the FBI went generally unpolished. That's the stakes, and we'll see where it plays out. The next few months, we're going to get a good sense of where this history is headed.
It will be an interesting autumn, no question about it. John, they tell me we got to go, but thanks so much again. Really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah,
enjoy.
You,
I guess Labor Day is coming up soon. Boy, that was a fast summer. Thanks so much for coming.
See you. Good to be with you, my friend.
All right, John. And we'll be back to wrap this puppy up on the Judge Jeanine Tunnel to Towers Foundation show in just a moment.
The Judge Jeanine Pirro Tunnel to Towers Foundation Sunday morning show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.